You'd be surprised.
All right.
Got it?
Be a little bit off.
All right.
See you guys later.
So Jared just left the camera there to observe us.
Yep.
That's right, cool.
You want me to stay? I'll stay.
I don't know. I mean, shit can happen. Whatever.
ACF, that's 415, Panopticon edition.
That's
All right.
See.
All right. And this door closes.
Man, that Jared.
Number one. This politician named Bernard Ayano to be his prime minister, but placed him under house arrest a year later on charges of conspiracy. This person jockeyed for power with the Dr. Abel Goomba in a campaign where he advertised his humble origins as a school teacher and his time serving as minister in the previous government of Bartholomew Boganda. One of his first acts in power was to disband the monopoly of the concessionary companies, which allowed for the free mining of diamonds in his nation. After he was restored to power by Operation Barracuda, he was quick -5. He was quickly deposed again by the Military Committee of National Recovery under Andre Kalingba. For 10 points, named this man who had had his time in power interrupted by Jean Bedel Bokassa after he became the first president of an independent Central African Republic.
That's great.
Okay, but
It's David Dacko. Number two, Bloch, Vongsness, and Redfield developed a rigorous quantum mechanical model of this phenomenon. Two different mechanisms causing this phenomenon cancel each other out in a Trozy experiment. This phenomenon causes intensity losses between pulses in an inept sequence. This process can be mathematically modeled by the Solomon equations. The constants that define this process can be measured using inversion recovery or Hahn echo experiments. This process causes a reduction in intensity over time of an FID signal. This process leads to magnetization transfer.
It's like decoherence.
-5. Leads to magnetization transfer between two nuclei in the nuclear Overhauser effect. Larmor precession and this process are modeled by the Bloch equations. It's not coupling, but this process comes in spin lattice and spin-spin forms characterized by exponential decay times labeled T1 and T2. For 10 points, name this process in which spins return to their equilibrium values after undergoing NMR.
Relaxation.
For 10. This work updates the seminal treatise of Louis Morere, whom the author accuses of spreading outmoded ideas. For 10 each. Name this compendium, first published in 1697, which attempts to correct previous thinkers' errors on theology, free will, and other topics. A portion of this text, named for Georgius Rorarius, discusses animal intelligence.
What time?
Answer. This is Historical and Critical Dictionary. In his article on Chancellor Michel de l'Hôpital, Pierre Bayle lambasted the Chancellor for opposing this policy. Another thinker advocated for this policy for everyone but atheists in a work addressed to Philip von Limburg. That's right here. The Rorarius section of the Historical and Critical Dictionary contained many remarks on the problem of evil, which this German philosopher addressed directly in his Theodicee. 20.
Can we mark that?
Sure. This man argued that the death of the national landscape led to the general public to underappreciate the creative powers of Louis Sullivan in his book Genius and Malocracy. This architect used a sky blue roof, scallop-shaped balconies, and a 172-foot triangular tower of gold in his posthumously built Marin County Civic Center. Much controversy surrounds this architect's elopement to Florence with Mama Borthwick Cheney, who later died when Juan Carlton set fire to their wedding. Arthur Collins and Byron Harlan made a recording of this song that was #1 for 10 weeks, and the second verse of this song describes a fiddle that screeches like a chicken, for 10 points each. Name this song that was composed in 1911, which repeatedly asks Oh Ma Honey to come and hear the title group. Answer? This is Alexander's Ragtime Band. It was the first major hit for this Russian-American songwriter who also wrote God Bless America and White Christmas. Yes. This other song by Irving Berlin, which appears in the musical Annie Get Your Gun, is sung by Frank, who schemed to know many girls and have lots of fun, are foiled when he falls in love with Annie.
so which was there's no good sexual
Answer?
There's no good
This is
sexual
called My Defenses Are Down. That's right. Top 10. And this is #4. This book uses the line, riding 3 days and nights he came upon the place, but decided it could not be come upon, in its odd poetic epilogue, which is titled Reflections Upon the Path. Its inner chapter asserts that William Empson and George Wilson Knight are the best critics of our time, and claims that every deep reader is an idiot questioner.
That's the anxiety of influence.
For 10. This novel's author claimed that it was inspired by a desire to answer the overheard shout of "What's happening there?" Bogart remembered from his childhood. For 10 points each. Name its 1959 novel. Residents of its title place include the Taylor Bogart, the carpenter working on a thing without a name named Popo, and an unemployed insane person named Madman, and the gambler Hat.
Miguel Street.
Miguel Street was written by this Indo-Trinidadian author of A House for Mr. Biswas and A Bend in the River.
Nightfall.
B.S. Naipaul's clashes with this Afro-Trinidadian Marxist are described in the biography of the latter by Farouk Dondi. This man's books include the cricket-centered autobiography Beyond the Boundary and a history of the Haitian Revolution called The Black Jacobins.
It's just
James.
James.
20. Or that's all 5. In 1963, John Stacey Adams put forth an equity theory of this phenomenon, which focuses on creating a balance between inputs and outputs. Philip Zimbardo's book on the cognitive control of this factor discusses consequences of choice and dissonance. A formula that includes valence and instrumentality is known as Victor Vroom's expectancy theory of this trait. Another theory states that hygiene factors will not increase this value, but can decrease it if they are absent, unlike intrinsic factors. That is Frederick Hertzberg's two-factor theory of this trait. Clark Hull posited that it arises in humans as a result of a tendency or arousal caused by unfulfilled biological needs. That is known as the drive reduction theory of this quality.
You want, like, motivation?
Yes. Your bonus. Answer the following about legal battles over polygamy in the Utah Territory for 10 points each. This 1874 statute, named for a senator from Vermont, redefined the judiciary system in the Utah Territory as being under the federal district courts, which ended the dominance of church officials. It was followed by the Edmunds Act, making polygamy a felony. Answer? This is the Poland Act. This secretary for Brigham Young volunteered himself to be the test case for polygamy. His prison sentence was upheld in a namesake 1878 Supreme Court case in which Morrison Waite wrote that religious duty was not a defense to criminal polygamy. Answer? It's Reynolds. A series of hearings starting in 1903 concerned whether the Senate should seat this Mormon apostle who co-sponsored a bill in 1930 with Willis Hawley that raised tariff rates to astronomical levels.
Yes,
That's right.
Oh, Holly, not Holly.
Toss-up 6. This deity, who was worshipped in caves with a sunken floor for offerings, was the god who governed days with the day sign Qualhibli, or eagle. A number of skin and eye diseases required propitiating this patron of goldsmiths, who was the subject of a hymn that called him the night drinker. This god was worshipped in the temple of Yopico. Sculptural depictions of this god and his followers contain telltale crisscross lines across the chest and back of the skull. A festival involving the so-called gladiator sacrifice was dedicated to this god, who was also known as Red Tecatlipoca. That's right. One of these drugs is a sulfate containing glycosaminoglycan, which works by activating an enzyme which inhibits factor 9A, perhaps IXA, and factor XA, or perhaps 10A, for 10 points each. Name these drugs used to treat DVT and PE. The efficacy of the process these drugs inhibit is measured using the International Normalized Ratio and APTT.
Okay, so did they inhibit the process?
Answer?
SSRI.
These are anticoagulants.
There we go.
In rare cases, the anticoagulant warfarin can induce this condition due to warfarin using up the body's supply of serum protein C, leading to excessive clotting. A cheese-like appearance is characteristic of the caseous form of this condition.
Like it's when you're, is that, I thought it was like when you're
Answer?
blood hardened. Thrombus.
This is necrosis.
Okay.
Warfarin works by inhibiting clotting factors dependent on this compound, which is found in abundance in foods like kale, spinach, and Brussels sprouts.
Yeah.
That's right.
I should have.
Toss-up 7. This man's attempt at securing restitution of the lost property of some hostages led another politician to compare him to Ulysses, who wanted to re-enter the cave of the Cyclops to fetch his belt and cap. He included a diatribe against Timaeus of Tauromenium in a treatise that relies on Timaeus for his account of Sicily. Late in life, he accompanied a general to Spain and witnessed the Numantian War, on which he wrote a now-lost monograph. In Book 4 of his surviving work, he describes the structure of Roman manifolds, which is why the Roman army is sometimes named for him. In his early life, this Acadian citizen of the Achaean League was taken hostage by Rome and made a tutor to Scipio Aemilianus, who he accompanied during the sack of Carthage. Only 5 out of the 40 volumes survive of his major work, which describes the Roman Republic as a superpower. For 10 points, named the 2nd century BCE Greek author of the Histories.
Polybius?
That's right.
That's all I'm thinking.
This term was introduced in Gaston Bachelard's study, The Poetics of Space, who referred to the pleasant reveries that are prompted by certain types of space, for 10 points each. Name this term, popularized in a book by human geographer Yi-Fu Tuan, which is the emotional bond that exists between a person and their space.
Sorry, it's not the space I can.
Answer? This is topophilia.
Of course.
In Topophilia, Yi-Fu Tuan cites this man's textbook, Britain and the British Seas, as evidence that many believe the British Isles were the center of the world. Another of his articles introduced the heartland theory of geography.
McKendrick.
McKendrick, you're right, yeah.
Yep. Yi Fuchuan's topophilia was also inspired by this other social scientist who argued that the ecology of a place could be only understood through the study of information systems in steps to an ecology of mind.
Bateson.
That's right, for one. Number 8. A value name for this scenario is defined as the sum of all inputs of P of 2 raised to the negative of the absolute temperature of the length of P, and is an example of a Martin-Loff random sequence. The proof of the principal theorem resulting from this scenario relies on constructing a model whose two inputs are another model of the same type as well as a string, then having that first model output the opposite of the second model. Afterwards, it is shown that there is a contradiction if both models are the same. A reduction of this scenario is used to prove that computing a non-trivial partial function is impossible, a result known as Rice's theorem. Chaitin's constant gives a
What do you about the scenario? Is it like figuring out if a Turing machine is going to stop the halting problem?
That's right, for time.
That's
that thing has
exactly
an
what that
invention.
sounds like.
Right. It's in some
Here's your
of
bonus. In the Bible, Judah forbids his third
Yeah,
son
points.
from performing this practice with regard to the childless Tamar, for 10 points each. Known as yibum in Jewish communities, or widow inheritance, this term refers to a type of marriage which obligates the brother of a deceased man to marry that man's childless widow.
Oh, what's that called? Oh, it's fancy, Henry David.
Answer? This is a levirate marriage.
Levirate, yeah.
Levirate.
Yeah.
As an alternative to levirate marriage, a man could perform halitza, in which the widow removes this item of clothing from him as part of a mourning ceremony. Jewish law claims that if the left one of these should be tied first, since tefillin is bound on the left hand.
Yeah, fine.
Isn't it the shoe?
What else were you talking about?
Yes.
Yeah.
In southern Slavic territories like Yugoslavia and Bosnia, this term refers to a rural community made up of one large patrilineal family which works as a communal plot of land, similar to the Russian obshchina system. These traditional communities often practiced levirate marriages.
We could try to say mirror, but that won't be right.
No.
Answer?
Mirror.
These are Zadrugas.
Of course they are.
That's 10. This is 9. A character in this play vows to make my very house real tonight in sheer excitement at the news that another character has a letter for him. In another scene, the description of a child running after a gilded butterfly, continually catching and releasing it and eventually tearing it apart, is provided by Valeria. Gudrun Ross depicted a director called the chief leading rehearsals of this play in a play of his own about Bertolt Brecht's version of it. A speech describing a time when all the body's members rebelled against the belly is delivered.
Sorry, which one is it? It's Coriolanus?
That's right. Bonus. This man is often credited as the first person to say the word fuck on British television because this man stuttered. Private Eye called it the first 13-syllable four-letter word in history, for 10 points each. Names influential British drama critic who detested what he dubbed the middle-class Loamshire play. His reviews for The Observer during the 1950s championed the angry young men.
Tynan.
Yes. Tynan was especially laudatory of his 1956 John Osborne play, in which Jimmy Porter has an affair with his wife, Allison's best friend, Helena.
Look back in anger.
Tynan cheered Arnold Wesker for putting a real live English communist family on the stage in Chicken Soup with Barley, which is grouped with this dramatic movement named after an image painted by John Brack.
Kitchen.
And same realism.
That's right. That's all. One of the 2 questions I wrote for this term.
Yeah, good. Tynan should come up. Very important to British liberation.
Toss of 10. Just before the recapitulation of the first movement of a work in this form by this composer, the principal theme in C major gives way to an E major folk dance, then to an E minor variation, before returning to the original C major theme. Another of these compositions by this composer features a third movement in which the trio is replaced by an alternativo consisting almost entirely of E-flat major scales. One of these works by this composer contains a D minor third movement in the form of a 2-part canon called The Witch's Bingle.
So these are string quartets by Haydn.
That's right. Good. Your bonus. This phenomenon is often interpreted as evidence of that the epoch of reionization was nearing completion at a time when the redshift was equal to about 6 for 10 each. Name this effect, which was first observed in an optical spectrum as a continuum flux of nearly 0 at wavelengths shorter than the Lyman alpha line.
So then it's got to be
Gunn-Peterson.
Yes, the Gunn-Peterson trop exists in some quasars' optical spectra since neutral hydrogen exists in this collection of baryonic matter that exists between galaxies.
Between galaxies.
Yeah.
IGM.
Yeah. The Gunn-Peterson effect was not confirmed until this astronomical project was carried out, since it cataloged quasars with redshifts greater than 6. It made use of a telescope at the Apache Point Observatory.
Wait. SDSS, was it? Yeah, SDSS.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's all.
6. That's a little high.
All right, let's get a score check.
All right, I have 180, 70.
Yeah, that's what I have.
All right.
So,
Ready to go?
Yep.
Ready to go? 11. This operation appears nested within itself n times in the nth term on the right side of the Baker-Campbell-Hausdorff formula. The width.
computation.
That's right.
Dude, I'm not done.
Answer the following about the great monarch William III of the Netherlands for 10 points each. William's reign saw a crisis in 1867 when France tried to buy this Grand Duchy, whose central fortress was designated as the Gibraltar of the North by Vauban. The Treaty of London maintained the neutrality of this landlocked European nation.
Which religion? Oh, no.
It's Luxembourg. Under William, this great politician reformed the Dutch constitution in 1848 to limit the powers of the monarch, set up direct elections, and established freedom of religion. He served as the first de facto prime minister before being ousted in 1853 by the April movement.
I was going after the first part.
Answer, this is Johann Rudolf Thorbecke.
Very good.
This daughter of William and his second wife, Princess Emma of Waldeck and Pyrmont, succeeded him and ruled as Queen of the Netherlands from 1890 till 1948, until she was followed by her own daughter, Juliana. It's Wilhelmina, so sorry, not
I told you the pen thing was in the way.
Toss of 12. This man, who was originally a deacon of a German town of Wessel, met his death in a hurricane on a merchant ship called the Flying Stag off the coast of St. Christopher, while exchanging liquor for tobacco in the West Indies. His frequent quarrels with the clergyman Johannes Michaelius and other misdeeds caused him to be dismissed from one post in favor of the drunkard Walter von Twiller, who in turn was quickly replaced by Willem Kieft. This man that was then financed by Samuel Blomert to sail aboard the Kalmar Nickel, which he landed at a tributary called the Minkus Kill. At that spot, this former Director General of the New Netherlands set up Fort Christina, which he designed as a base for beaver trading with the Lenape. For 10 points, name this man who started the Swedish colony in Delaware and allegedly used $24 worth of glass beads to buy the island of Manhattan.
You win.
Yeah, good. A prominent example of this technique is Andrea Montaine's depiction of many cupids peeking down the oculus of the Camera dello Sposi for 10 points each.
We're talking.
Okay. Name this illusionistic technique in which the artist paints foreshortened figures to make it appear as if the figures in the painting are correctly proportioned when looking at them. It literally means from below upward.
De Soto's.
Yep. This artist, born Antonio Allegri, made use of De Soto and Sue technique for his version of the Assumption of the Virgin in the Parma Cathedral.
Is by Correction.
And what?
Parma.
Okay, yeah.
Correction.
Yeah. De Soto and Sue inspired this later illusionistic technique in which the artist painted architectural features at the top of the ceiling to create an illusion. A prominent example of this technique is Pietro de Cortona's frescoes for the Palazzo
It's
Barberini.
basically Trump Lloyd, right? I mean, whatever form they
I
want,
think that's what they want.
they would have to prompt it.
Answer?
Trump Lloyd.
It's quadratura.
Okay.
20. 13. One of this man's novels dubbed the forces governing an authoritarian state the logic and is about a former secret policeman named Antonio Rojas Martins, who is on death row for his involvement in the Salinas affair. His recurring characters include the philosopher Dr. Obla, who waits in a publication office with Curti and Sarah at the beginning of a play discovered by the editor King Bitter in another of his novels. The author of that play, B, first appeared in a novel by this man in which he constantly recalls the word no, indicating his refusal to subject the child to the suffering of the world. This author of detective story drew on his own life for a novel in which Yuri Kobus learns how to survive sights from Bandi Sitram and after earlier stops in Buchenwald and Auschwitz. For 10 points, name this author of Liquidation, Kaddish for a Child.
His name is Kurtish?
Answer the following about some really old roads for 10 points each. This road, which once passed through the Pontine marshes where a canal was built, was named for a Roman censor during the Samnite Wars and connects Brindisi to Rome.
Okay.
Yep. This man extended the Grand Trunk Road to connect his capital of Agra with his hometown of Sasaram, where his mausoleum was constructed in the middle of a lake. He forced the Mughal ruler Humayun out of India in 1540, an exile that lasted 15 years.
Is it?
Okay.
You should talk about it. All right, share shot.
That's right. This road that ran from Dover to London and then to St. Albans was established in Roman era Britain as the ITER II and ITER III routes. It took on an Anglo-Saxon name, which usually serves as the namesake of a bloody battle in 60 AD, where Suetonius smashed allied tribes under Boudica.
Oh, it's
Watling Street.
Watling Street.
That's all good.
Yeah.
Good job.
14. This book considers if Aristotle was wrong about motion being divided into natural and forced parts in the section What Were Our Ancestors Talking About?, which examines the impossibility of finding a deterministic answer to the general question, what did they mean? Another section of this book examines the Copernicus-Bellarmine debates and suggests that Thomas Kuhn's incommensurability thesis makes them incompatible to the Lenin-Kerensky debates. Its second chapter opens with a thought experiment in which a group of bipeds on the other side of the galaxy developed breakthroughs in neurology and biochemistry and thus conceived of human pain as the stimulation of C fibers. That section on the Antipodians appears in a portion of this text about persons without minds in an attempt to refute a certain Greek ocular metaphor.
So, philosophy and American nature.
That's right.
I didn't know which Rorschach work it is, sorry.
Your bonus. The speaker of a poem claims that none may teach this thing and notes that when it comes, the landscape listens, shadows hold their breath. For 10 points each, identify this certain thing that appears on winter afternoons where it oppresses like the heft of cathedral tunes.
A certain slant of light.
There's a certain slant of light was written by this poet, the author of I Taste of Liquor Never Brewed, and I Heard a Fly Buzz When I Died. Yes. The speaker notes that this is the hour of lead in this Dickinson poem, which describes a situation when the feet mechanical go round, the stiff heart questions, and the nerves sit ceremonious. Like
After great pain, a formal feeling comes.
It's all there. I like it. 15. One member of this family lost a fortune by investing in the Andros Fiber Company promoted by Ambrose Shea, which failed to cultivate the sisal plant. In a speech supporting that decision, he cited the underdeveloped estates of the West Indies as a key to his policy of tariff reform. That man with this surname toured the country with fellow party member Charles Dilke, supporting the unauthorized program, promising 3 acres and a cow to all farm workers, and co-founded the National Education League. Known for wearing a ribboned monocle, he engineered the khaki election in which he won re-election of the ill Lord Salisbury, who had appointed him colonial secretary in the run-up to the Boer War. That man's son, serving as foreign secretary.
Isn't it just Chamberlain?
Okay.
Joseph Chamberlain is 3 acres like that.
Okay, hold on.
Your bonus. For a system of 2 particles interacting under this type of force, the Laplace-Runge lens vector is conserved for 10 each. Name this type of force present in Kepler problems. The electrostatic force between 2-point charges and the gravitational force between 2-point masses are this type of force.
Wait, do they want like radio?
They just want
Inverse
radio.
square? Are you sure you don't want?
Oh,
Answer?
It's like a
Inverse square.
central inverse square force.
Yes.
Good job.
All inverse square forces are by definition this type of force, which only depends on the distance between the 2 interacting bodies.
Radio.
Sorry, I have central. This theorem states that the only central forces that can produce closed orbits that are not perfectly circular are the inverse square force and the Hooke's law harmonic oscillator force.
they want the law?
They want a theorem that says what you can get.
Answer?
into.
No, I'm not.
This is Bertrand's theorem, or perhaps Bertrand's
That's a
theorem.
thing.
So that is 10.
Good.
Toss of 16. The Felsenstein group at UW and the Swafford group at FSU maintain popular software packages used to generate these constructs. Steele and Lake developed a method for creating these constructs which is not affected by unequal rate effects. That method is known as paralinear distances. The accuracy of these constructs can be determined using the permutation tail probability test.
Yeah, so it's gonna be something.
Yeah.
A legend claims this man had his retainer Katakura Kojuro gouge out his right eye so that the enemy couldn't take it from him, and therefore he was known as the One-Eyed Dragon for 10 points each. Named as daimyo, who founded the city of Sendai and sent his retainer Hasakura Tsunanaga on a diplomatic mission to the Vatican on the ship the San Juan Bautista. Answer? This is Date Masamune. Masamune insulted Toyotomi Hideyoshi by delaying and helping him siege this castle, which was the Hojo clan's stronghold. Chiba Shigatane surrendered this castle in 1590, putting an end to the Hojo threat. It's Odawara Castle. This founder of the Tokugawa shogunate, the victor at Sakigahara, restored Date Masamune to his lands. In return, Masamune read him poetry on his deathbed. Answer? Yeah. 17. A leader of this religious sect became stuck in the ground at a certain spot while walking in a garden, and after a number of blindfolded followers also got stuck there, that spot became known as the Jiva, or the symbolic location where all humans were created. After that incident, a wooden stand with the power to create magical food and allow humans to live 115 years was placed in the sanctuary of this faith. One of its primary scriptures is called the tip of the writing brush, because it was supposedly created automatically. Its adherents attend the 9 Baseki letters in order to sweep away the 8 dusts that are said to plague the mind in this faith. This sect believed that a figure called Oyasama revealed the teachings of God the Parent and taught people to live the joyous life. For 10 points, name this religion found by Miki Nakayama, also known as the Foundress, while she was living in Japan around 1840. That's time. Sorry, Enrico.
Enrico, yeah,
I was great, okay.
Toss of 18. In this painting, numerous ships with white masts and curved prows lie on one side of its vanishing lines, whose vanishing point lies beyond a spire that includes the sun. In an odd juxtaposition, the illumination of stained glass windows in the left foreground of this painting indicates that it is set at night, but the right background of this painting clearly features the daytime sun. This painting features an aqueduct above a pair of temples that lie on another of its vanishing lines. The sides of this canvas are bounded by an arch that is decorated with green drapery adorned with the star motif. This painting depicts a cathedral amidst a dark forest, as well as a wispy Egyptian pyramid.
architect's dream.
Ah, that makes so much sense now.
An author from this country wrote about how a man who was unsettled by overhearing a prostitute poop in the story 7 p.m. Wife, and also wrote the novels How to Forget a Woman and I'm a Communist, Biddy, for 10 points each. Named this home country of Dan Lungu, which is also the birthplace of an author of a prose poem about Oscar Pasteur and a novel in which Lola's suicide precedes the narrator's befriending Edgar, Georg, and Kurt.
I have no idea where we are.
Somewhere in Eastern Europe, maybe.
Yeah, what doesn't
Answer?
come up? Bulgaria.
It's Romania. Those works, given the English titles The Hunger Angel and The Land of Green Plums, respectively, were written by this German-Romanian author of The Appointment.
Oh,
Know what's happening.
no. Hunger Angel is famous, though.
Answer?
Sorry, Mueller.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
The Gas Heart is among the plays of this Romanian Dadaist, who also wrote the epic poem The Approximate Man and the manifesto The First Heavenly Adventure of Mr. Anti-Pyrene.
Oh, you're right.
He appears for Tom Stopper's
Yeah, you're right.
Things.
Sorry. Sorry.
No.
You got 20. There's 2 toss-ups left. 19. This book's translation by Thomas Underdown was used as a source by William Shakespeare for his play Cymbeline. The main characters of this book meet a witch who wraps a piece of hardened dough in laurels and tosses it into a trench so that she can summon the shade of her dead son. Its 9th book recounts the impressive siege of Cyane, in which Hydaspes redirects the waters of a river to nearly drown that city's inhabitants. One of this work's main characters was born with a pale complexion because her mother looked at a painting of Andromeda. That woman is sold into slavery by Thyamis, which sets into motion much of this book's plot on her attempts to reunite with her chaste lover. For 10 points. No. For 10 points, the travails of Theagenes and Chariclea are described in what 3rd century novel by Heliodorus, which is named for an African country.
Oh, really? Okay. Got it, yeah.
Sorry, it's Ethiopia.
Yeah.
Or an Ethiopian romance, various other things involving Ethiopian. So, this is the final topic. In the introduction to one book, this thinker explained that he was motivated to write it after being surprised to discover that the symposium was a defense of homosexual love. In that book, this thinker compares eating chocolate ice cream instead of vanilla if the price of vanilla skyrockets with a choice to engage in homosexual or heterosexual acts. He announced that he would range himself on the side of the skeptics in a 1990 book that credited Jeremy Bentham for the pragmatic concept of law it advocated. This author of Sex and Reason...
Is it Posner?
Yeah.
I didn't do that. Was that
Bonus.
exciting?
This man was nicknamed Pitchiocampes, which translates as pine bender, since he would often ask people to help him bend pines, then would let go so that they would go flying or be torn in half. For 10 points each, name is banded, dispatched by Theseus.
Sinus.
Sinus.
Is that your answer? Sinus was killed by Theseus while the latter was traveling to this city from Trozen to meet his father Aegeus.
That is where that
Where
dude
do you know
lives.
this king happens?
Yep. After Sinus was killed, this woman, his daughter, gave a field rush and wild asparagus and prayed to them for protection. After it was later revealed Theseus meant her no harm, she and her son, by Theseus, founded a clan of
Pretty
Ixiods,
turd. What?
who promised to do no harm to those plants.
Very good.
Yep.
Ancient Greek values are not.
Good
Good
game.
game. Alright. Good game. Good game.
We can play more quiz.